Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's Bug Fest on ZBrush Live channel, live streaming. So you might notice that I'm slowly getting better looking lighting here. I'm not getting better looking, but lighting's getting better looking. And I actually have a boom mic, so that can only mean one thing. I'm finally going to start getting serious about producing more stuff for YouTube, hopefully. All comes down to time at this point. But tonight we're going to talk about bugs. And there's a couple projects that I've been working on in the past few live streams, so I kind of want to finish those so I can move on to something else this month. So I've been working on this bumblebee, if you guys have been following, and it's pretty much there except for obviously the hair. My plan is to rig this in Blender and add hair in Blender. So it's kind of odd looking because it's essentially a naked bumblebee. But I've been doing this for a friend and who's a scientist, a bumblebee specialist. And he just had a couple notes that I wanted to address. The one thing being that he felt that the wings still look too flat. There's not enough dimension to them. And so he sent me some more reference imagery so we can see a bit more details in the wings. So I'm going to pump up some of those details, maybe see if I can improve a few things as well. And so I'm going to do that. And then also, if I get to it, finish poly painting my little cartoon Katydid here, which I started a few months back and needs to be finished. So I'll do that, and also be answering questions and talking ZBrush and all that kind of good stuff. So feel free to post any questions into the chat, and I'm going to start with just basically working on the wings a bit. Look at this. So what we're doing this, guys, is let's go down a couple subdivision levels. My favorite material going here. I did want to show that actually the scientist I've been working with did do a 3D print of my model. I didn't have, all I did was send him the scale model out of ZBrush as is, and so he printed it. I didn't do as much prep work on it. But it looks pretty good. I would like to see more detail, obviously. I don't know much about the printer that he used or the resin or any of that kind of stuff. Like I said, I kind of just sent him the model as is. I also would have posed it probably a little bit different. But it looks pretty cool. I'm surprised that it printed it as well as it did, considering I didn't really check to make sure all the parts were airtight. Usually or watertight. Usually I spend a lot of time prepping a model like that for print, but you know, whatever, interesting experiment. So let's go to this guy, and I'm going to go down one more subdivision level. Make sure that we have symmetry enabled. And I'm going to use clay tubes. And really just start to kind of pump this out a bit. We can go to this side. What I'll do also is I want to see the veins while I'm working on this. I think I just had to really just exaggerate this quite a bit. So also I think I could do more here. I think I'm looking at the hind wing hang while working the forewing, but I'm more or less just kind of trying to get an idea of what I could do to bring out the depth a bit more. Facets in a ring. Are you talking about like the you're talking about like a gemstone of a ring? Cool. Thanks for everybody for showing up. Really appreciate it. I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by facets in a ring. Definitely, if you're talking rings and stuff, I mean, I've worked on some of my own rings, not so much with stones, but Tomas Wittelsbach is your man for the questions about jewelry. He does a live stream on this channel as well, although I'm not sure which day of the week. Also, Nacho does all jewelry stuff. You might have some good ideas in that. I mean, I have some ideas in doing it. I wouldn't necessarily do it with noise. A ring without gemstones. I'd have to see like a reference of what you're talking about. Some kind of visual reference. I'm not sure what facets on a ring actually means. I mean, I can visualize what I think you mean, but I don't know if it's the same thing. Yeah, I mean the noise feature in ZBrush is tricky, especially if you use the procedural stuff, because it's a little bit hard to predict what you're going to get, and the way they visualize it, I don't know, it's kind of, you don't really see it until you apply the noise and you go back and edit it. It's kind of weird. One thing that can really help though, if you do want to use the surface editor, is to import an alpha. You know, like if you're going to go. Let's see if I have a good alpha. Oh, like a hammered texture. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay. The way I would do it, you could start with doing noise at a very large scale, right? And then use that as kind of a starting place. Yeah, that's the thing about the like this kind of thing, and do apply to mesh, or even actually just mask by noise. Yeah, and then go and use something like maybe a trim dynamic. I don't know. I don't know about that. Let's get rid of the actually some other. like any of this. Sorry. It's throwing me off a little bit because I was sort of in wing mode. Probably. Actually skip the noise part altogether and just go for something like an H polish brush or something like that and start hitting it kind of like this kind of thing. Even maybe use like like the square alpha to get a little bit extra noise in there and that kind of thing. This is the demon football. You know, you could go about doing this kind of thing for first paths and then good old clay polish. One of my favorite tricks. Over at the old mask there, let's see. This is going to look a little bit like skin, but I can clear that mask and then smooth this out. Just go over it a few times, kind of like this kind of thing. I don't know, is that kind of what you're talking about? Somewhere along those lines? I mean, this is how I would kind of go about doing it. Depends if I had like a reference. You know, if you need more detail, you could just lower your brush and come in here and, you know. And then hit it with a clay polish a few times, you know. Something kind of like that. I don't know. Alright, whatever. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's kind of what I would sort of how I would go about doing it. I'd probably spend more time on it, obviously, but. There's also, you know, you could always check out some of the custom brushes on ArtStation. Sometimes they have some really nice ones that will get you a little bit quicker, get you close to where you want to go a little bit faster than just using a clay or a H polish brush. BPR transparency. It's okay. It's not going to get you a very realistic looking transparency. But basically, the way that it works is it's okay. It works in a subtool basis. So Let's duplicate this guy. And let's get a different material on here. We'll just do skin shade 4. And I would go in here. Under display properties, BPR settings, you can turn on BPR transparent shading. It asks you if you want to turn it off in your render options. I'm going to say yes, because obviously I do. And then we go into render, just a double check under BPR transparency is enabled. And then you're basically going to work in 2 different places. You're going to work in the render palette, but also down here. So if I do BPR render, you can see that this one is transparent. And what it's really using is kind of like a Fresnel to create the transparency. It's either using the Fresnel or the color on the object, or a little bit of both. So if I go in here and let's just paint some black on here. Yeah, I think that's a limitation in BPR transparency. If you really want to get a realistic transparency, you might want to consider going to something either like Redshift or Keyshot, as BPR is going to kind of fall short. But you can see how the color here is a little bit more transparent, so you can use different shades here to modify the transparency. If you go in here to, let me see, render properties, BPR transparency. The overall strength, and then you have the normal factor versus by color. So normal factor is essentially Fresnel. So if I bring this up, the Fresnel you can see if I have this at a very low value, I get more of that edge shading. And if I have this at a high value, let's turn off by color, it's going to be less. And then the by color factor is going to determine how much like black and white colors affect the transparency. And that's so a way to preserve like the highlight. So you can mess with these 2 settings here. And the other problem is that the refraction here is not very realistic. I mean, this refraction value, that's not an index of refraction, it's just an overall setting. And it just slightly distorts what you see behind the transparent object. In other words, it's really hard to get a realistic result from BPR transparency. Which tutorial are you referring to? Yeah, I think it's kind of a limitation. Like, I would struggle really hard to get, especially if you're talking about like 3 objects. And the other thing is like, if you have a subtool selected, it shouldn't affect it in the BPR render, but it, you know, if I have, let's say, let's see, which one is the one I have is transparent? This one. Duplicate it. I mean, you can see they're both semi-transparent, both of these objects. And you could try to take the subtool right here and see if you can, under display properties, adjust its visibility versus the visibility of the other subtools. So you can see this one I'm lowering. I'll bring that one up, and then bring this one down. So you can see you can adjust the visibility of individual subtools. That works okay. It might be that if you're having different subtools and you're getting different results, double check to see what the BPR settings are in that particular subtool, because this setting changes depending on which subtool you have selected. So if I have this one selected, it's annoying that they're all the way down here. This one I have BPR visibility is 50%. You could also play with the BPR shadows, although I think that's just going to make things look worse. The the other thing is like my advice, like, I don't know. I think it might be a limitation. I think it's a difference between the expectation of what BPR transparency can actually do. What I would suggest, if you're interested in getting a realistic render, but you're on a budget, would be to check out Blender. Because Blender has a very nice renderer and it's free. Of course, there's a learning curve to it. But that's probably one of your best options. If you have money to spend, then I would say look into either Keyshot or getting into Redshift. But I think that actually Keyshot's okay, but actually the nice thing about Keyshot is it's incredibly easy. You could just send your model straight to Keyshot and start playing around with it, and it's very quick. You can send it straight from ZBrush if you get the bridge plugin, which costs extra money, but it's very, very fast. And if you need a really quick turnaround without mucking about too much in the weeds of working with renderers, it's very nice. Redshift has a learning curve to it, but the benefit of Redshift is that it's integrated into ZBrush. If you get Redshift, doesn't matter if you get Redshift for, Blender or Cinema 4D or Maya or whatever. Once you get Redshift, it's automatically, you can have it integrated into ZBrush. It's the same Redshift. Marmoset is excellent too. Yes, I think Marmoset's another good one, and it's also easy to use. But I think the problem is you just could be hitting your head against the wall trying to get a really nice result out of BPR transparency. Because it's like ZBrush uses this weird kind of voodoo technology to create the images that we see, and it's not a ray tracer, and it's really hard to get a decent transparency if you don't have ray tracing. That's why like Redshift is nice, because it's an actual ray tracer and you get very realistic materials. And Redshift for ZBrush is most likely going to get improved with each version as they update it, because I know they're very keen on getting a nice renderer integrated into ZBrush. The other thing is you can also get really nice, decent renders out of Substance Painter too, because it has a ray tracer built into it, ray trace rendering. It's good for previews and that kind of stuff. And then another semi-free option is Unreal. But you got to make sure that your machine is optimized for running Unreal, and that's a bigger learning curve. Like in terms of learning curve, like KeyShot probably has the lowest learning curve of any of them because it's just super easy to use, but it's not cheap. Nice thing about something like Blender is there's just loads and loads and loads of training material on it everywhere. Yeah, if you're using Cinema 4D, Redshift or Cinema 4D, I mean, Cinema 4D and Redshift are both owned by Maxon, so the integration is really nice. And then Cinema 4D does amazing render. Well, Redshift is Cinema 4D. I don't use Cinema 4D, but I work with a lot of people who do. I just worked on title sequence for Ballerina. I thought I'd slip in a plug for myself there. And I have some other stuff that I've worked on, and I did that with the Cinema 4D artist. Let's see. So I think I've gone crazy with this, but it definitely looks more, I'm thinking like if I'm going to use this in a displacement map, then I can control the strength of the displacement at render time. So it might be a better idea to overdo it. Let's see. Nice thing about going to a lower subdivision level is I didn't lose that detail that I sculpted in earlier on the higher subdivision level, so I still have my little pimples there. I just go in here, you lower the Z intensity of this a little bit, and just adding some of these sort of tension wrinkles in here, just to make this look a little bit more interesting. Using the SK cloth brush. And it's kind of almost like cloth folds, but not quite. Or like, I don't know, plastic folds in a way. Let's see. I go down a few levels here and kind of smooth this because I think it's a little bit overdone. We'll see. This is going to be, you know, this is very dark color because it's a dead wing, but I think, you know, the live thing is going to be very transparent. So some of this looks like it's really exaggerated here, but it might end up being the right amount in the final version. Let's see. Let's leave it at that. Some nice details here on the veins themselves that I think I'm missing. Things get kind of grisly down here. It's just, I don't know how much I can get out of this because it's just a big glob of ripped off goo. It's gonna be hidden inside the model too, but I don't know. Wing muscles are hard. Or wing veins or muscles, where the attachment is. Okay, let's take a look at the hind wing here. I'm going to save this real quick. Definitely got more going on here on the forewing. I'm liking that better. It's a little over the top, but I think that's fine. So take the membrane here and step down a few. Take my clay tubes. For many bees and hornets, their wings actually fold. The forewings can fold like a taco, which is a really difficult shape to achieve, whether you're doing it through rigging or sculpting, folding in half along the veins. I've done it a few times. I did it on a project I did for a live stream last year. It's tricky. And for a rig, you could do it with like a blend shape or something like that, or a morph, depending on what program you're using. But it's not an easy shape to achieve, because you're looking at the reference images, and of course you're looking at folded wings, and often they're kind of mixed up with the other wings, you know. So it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. But if you look at wasps, a lot of time when they're like resting in a flower or whatever, you'll notice that their wings look really, really narrow. And that's because they're actually folded over. We definitely have some cool wasps in our garden. I gotta break out the old camera and start taking pictures of them. I have a nice macro setup, but I haven't used it in literally years, so I gotta get back into that. Great thing about having a garden is you don't have to get very far to get some great images. They're literally right outside your door. And that's the thing, it's like, for those of you, you know, doing nature-based organic modeling and stuff, photography is a great resource. It costs money to get equipment, but you don't have to get the greatest equipment in the world. In fact, there's a whole movement of people doing macro stuff with iPhone cameras. But the nice thing about it is it's very quick. You can go out and spend an hour and take 50 pictures. It's hard to draw 50 pictures in an hour. Some people could do it, I can't. But it gives you a nice practice on things like lighting and composition. And you notice with photography, especially digital photography, since it's so instantaneous, you get to learn a lot about what you personally like in your art and what you like to see in your images by what you take. So you sort of pay attention to the things that attract you. I know when I started playing with the camera, and I'm not like a great photographer by any means or anything like that, but I just noticed that even before I really got into bugs, I was always trying to get closer to stuff. I just always wanted to kind of see the unseen world of like very, very small micro world. It's just always fascinated me because it's like a whole universe in front of your nose that's difficult to see without some kind of magnification. But I've also noticed over the years, taking pictures, whether, I'll take pictures of insects, and then a lot of my pictures ends up being of flowers because the insects fly away. But taking pictures of flowers and leaves and, light and shadow and how they play with the leaves and the colors that you're drawn to, it's a way of kind of understanding your own style and your own preferences. And then you can bring that into your ZBrush work, especially when you get into doing like rendered images. Because doing rendering of these things is a lot like doing macro photography. And also doing macro photography with other people is a lot of fun too, because you learn a lot, and it's just kind of fun to hike around in the brush with other people. It's kind of funny when it's like going on bug shot workshops and stuff, which I haven't done in many, many years. But it's funny, we had this great group of nerdy people wandering around with cameras, and somebody finds something and they all start screaming and everybody runs over towards it to see if they can get a picture. And then you actually have like 4 or 5 people all taking turns trying to take a picture of this one rare spider or something like that. I've noticed the people that get the best pictures are the people who are just absolutely and totally inconsiderate of everybody else. Because they'll sit there for like a half an hour taking 60, 70 pictures of this one bug while you're sitting there waiting for your chance. By the time you get your chance, you're like, all right, I've seen enough of this. And you take like 10 pictures and wander off. And then that person who took 60 or 70 pictures always comes out with something that's absolutely amazing. But it's also really cool to see, if you're with a group and people are taking pictures of the same bug, how different people's pictures come out with, even though it's the same bug, same lighting, same setup. The only thing that's different is maybe the camera rig and the person taking the picture, and then how they crop it and post process and that kind of thing. But it's a really cool, fun thing to do. It's also fun to do if you have kids, because kids can get into it. Okay. I think I puffed this guy out enough. Did I forget to turn on symmetry? Oh, I forgot to turn on symmetry. There we go. Oh, what fun. All right. Well, we're going to see if we can fix our symmetry here. So I'm going to mask this guy off. Go down to the lowest subdivision level. Go down to deformation. And find my smart resim. Let me make sure that symmetry is on the right axis here. Yeah, x-axis. So smart resim, that worked pretty well. Basically what smart resim does is it looks both sides of the symmetry axis, and I believe it only uses world symmetry. It doesn't use local symmetry. It looks on both sides of the axis, and it averages out the points so that they're kind of sort of the same between the two sides. So that's why you mask off the part that you like, because when masking it off, then it's only going to look at this side and try and match it with these points. Doesn't always work, and usually it works best if you go to lowest subdivision level, do it, then step up at the subdivision level and do it again. Yeah, but sometimes it will save your butt, because I frequently forget to turn symmetry on, especially if I'm really getting into the detail here. Happens to everyone. This one's pretty symmetrical. Let's just use the hotkey D for it to go up in subdivision level. D to go up one more. Okay, I'm going to clear the mask, press X to make sure I have symmetry on, and then go in here and just kind of like I did before, make some of these sort of tension lines. He's been making weird grunting noises now. Once again, I probably overdid it, but I can go down to a lower subdivision level, smooth it out, and knock it back a little. Shift D to go down to the subdivision level, and then I'll smooth it a little bit. A little on the extreme side, but I think it's alright. Let's see what it looks like. I'm going to do final displacement in Blender. I'm going to save this guy and work on my Katydid a little bit. So hold the shift key, turn off Z add, so I have a blur brush, and then I'm going to go over to paint. And let's see, I want to have this thorax bit. I mean, it's kind of nice to take a break from these things and come back with fresh eyes. So I'm going to kind of bring back some of the excitement into what I'm doing. So I'm going to make this thorax part largely dark green, I think, with some yellow, a little bit of orange in here. So I'm going to alt click on it and then select this greenish color, and I'll do color, fill object. Whoops, that's not the right object. Color, fill object. There we go. And let me see, this is 241,000. So let's bring it up. Whoops. Control D to subdivide it. We'll get up to 3 million or so, and then maybe just spend a couple seconds here just adding a little bit more detail. Something that I can work with. Superfine surface texture. Are you talking about with the bee wing I was just working on, or this model? I do use a combination of surface noise, sometimes the noise brush, sometimes applying surface noise, or I'll use mask by noise and then use a brush to kind of lightly bring out just the noise in some areas. With some of the little dots, the other thing that I like to use is extract brushes, because that's kind of a way to make an alpha quickly, but you have kind of control over it. So for example, let's say I take some of the let's say I worked on this kind of detail right here on the abdomen. All right, I'm going to click it so I have this one selected, and then I'm going to control click on the undo time slider. This is important, otherwise it won't work correctly. And then I'll go in here and let's turn off symmetry for a second and choose like an extract brush, one of these guys. Maybe extract, drag rect, and then hold the G key so this turns blue, and then just drag out a little bit, and it just samples that section, and you see how it creates an alpha. So then I can go to, you know, another object, subdivide it, get up to like 1 million or so, and now I can use that brush, you know, to create this kind of, so it's a nice way to make an alpha real quickly, have that kind of thing. And then another technique that I use probably way too much is if you lay down a fair amount of noise or some kind of detail like this, and then do where to go? My brain stopped. Geometry, clay polish. It leaves a mask behind, right? If I switch over to flat color, you can see there's a very thin mask line, and I'll invert that mask. Hide it, and then you can use something like an inflate brush to come in here, and that's a great way of getting a super fine texture. And you do a little smoothing. Whoops, turn on the Z add. And this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of taking advantage of that residual mask. Or you could hold the Alt key. This is really great for kind of bug textures and skin textures or zombie textures, anything organic. Z color plugin. Okay, so let's check this out. Do I have this installed? This is something you got to install. Oh, wait, no, I got a Z color right here. Okay, so so let's see. Yeah, I'm getting, oh, there we go. Yep, you're right. That's pretty cool. I think you have to have the image selected, is that right? Pretty cool. Yeah. So Z color is sampling from. Oh, I see. What's interesting is it doesn't really work over the blank. Come on, the blank part. It's right here, but the parts of the. If it's over the model, it works. I'm guessing, or no? Maybe I'm wrong. It seems to be somewhat picky in how it's doing it. Okay. It sort of semi-works. It was working a second ago. That's cool. It's very strange how it works, though. It's like it's offset from the cursor. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it doesn't like my Cintiq or something. So I'm selecting over in this red right here, it's getting green. As I drag over here, it's like it's picking up colors from, I don't know where it's picking those colors up from. Kind of odd. Okay, let's go back to, oh, there we go. And that's how you crash ZBrush. Z color might be confused because I've got, you know, OBS going and ZBrush and Cintiq. I don't know. I'll have to try it again at some point. We have less going on. I like the clay polish technique, but it destroys the details. Is there a way to keep the details? Well, you could do it with a layer. You could put the details on a layer and then create a new layer. Do clay polish on that new layer and use that technique, and then, you know, adjust the strength of the layer. That would be my guess, because the thing about the clay polish brush, I mean, the other thing you could do is, instead of doing clay polish, because really what I'm taking advantage of, I like the clay polish because it is sort of smoothing out those details and then adding the mask. But if you don't want to smooth out those details, then the alternative would be to try any of the masking, whether it's, you know, mask by cavity, mask by smoothness, all those. I mean, there's so many different masking options in here that you could get some really cool versions that way, and then it doesn't change the details, and then you just basically do the same thing. You're masking that area, mess with the mask a little bit, try inverting it, then, you know, use the inflate brush, whatever. It's just a different masking technique. I just like the clay polish because I like the way that it does some kinds of sort of insect-like skins, but you're right, it can destroy some of the details you've got. How do you apprehend a creature that doesn't exist and the concept is not really clear? I read a lot. No, I mean, well, you know, if you look back at my older live streams, I'd done a couple I did do one wasp in the live stream that was completely made up. And, you know, I mean, looking at reference and studying insect anatomy, it's no different than doing a humanoid creature. If you understand human anatomy, then you're going to have a much more believable creature than if you don't know anything about the anatomy, right? It builds that believability in it. So the more you know about the subject, the more you can use that knowledge to inform your own designs. So it's the same thing with creature insects. If it's not enough to just sculpt an ant and say, all right, I'm an expert in insects. And the reason I say that is because that's exactly what I did. I sculpted a couple ants and I said, I know everything. I didn't know anything. And I'm still learning an awful lot. But the more you learn about a particular subject, the more it informs your creature designs. So if you're going to do a vampire, why not spend some time studying bats or wolves, or bats and wolves? Because those kinds of things are going to inform the way that you sculpt your creature. Same thing with insects. You get a sense for what makes sense in the insect world of shape language, which is much broader, has a much wider variation than human world. But even so, if you take a look at things like beetles, compare them to katydids, compare them to wasps and ants, you learn the similarities in the shape languages and then also the differences. They all use a similar body plan, and then there's some similarities, like all insects that have eyes have compound eyes. The compound eyes may be more or less simple. Katydid has very complex compound eyes. An ant has a very simple one, but they still have that kind of same basic, multifaceted lenses on the surface of the eyes. Or things like antennas. Antennas vary, but they're still there and they're still segmented. So type of segments might differ, but they're still there. Or leg segments. So that's basically how I start thinking about a creature. Now, you can get a little bit trapped in realism, just like if you study human anatomy, you get to a point where you're stuck and all you can draw is really muscular dudes or voluptuous women or muscular women, and you lose the sense of any kind of variation because you're just absolutely trapped by trying to get everything right. Another example is when I studied music in college. I studied a lot of music theory, and I studied so much music theory that I couldn't write music anymore because I was always obsessed with, avoiding parallel fifths or octaves or whatever, that kind of thing, like being really restrained by the rules to the point where I was afraid to stretch them. And when that happens, you've got to kind of take a tack. You have to do the Yoda thing and unlearn what you've learned. Go in a completely different direction. Join a punk rock band, which is how I destroyed my hearing, or something like that. Or do some really wacky characters, break the rules for a while, and then come back and find that middle ground. But, it's like that's basically how I go about doing. Like the insects that I've created out of my imagination, I'm sort of happy with them. I feel like they're still a little bit too stiff. Like I like to have that kind of freedom that somebody like Neville Page has with his creature designs. So I need to break the rules a little bit more, I think, to get some interesting designs out of it, which is why I'm kind of doing the stylized Katydid, just to see where I can go with it, Bat with a chameleon. That sounds vaguely familiar. Is it like a video? They have Noma Workshop's been pumping out a lot of videos lately. A lot of really good stuff, including my videos, which you should all check out. Okay, well, ZBrush crashed. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to go back and let me see. This is 5 million now? No, that's what I thought. Let's get this out of the way. It's starting to bug me. Okay, 3.5 million. I'm just going to go in here and there's no shortage of great books on insects. I got a bunch of them behind me. I like books a lot. I just like reading. There's some books that I've read that have just like completely changed the way I perceive everything, and I've gotten so much out of them, you know. Anything by E.O. Wilson is really amazing. Also David Quammen. Another good area of study for creature designs is we often forget about the microbial world, but man, there's some really cool things in the world of microbes that are way beyond crazy. I had to do a bunch of microbes for the planetarium show at Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles a few years ago. It was a lot of fun. So I got to do the tardigrade, which everybody knows. Tardigrades are famous, you know. Everybody loves the tardigrade. But I also did some other lesser known ones, like a rotifer, which is like a weird vacuum cleaner that swims. And these are all living things that exist in the pond water outside your house. You know, you could just, the cool thing is that since I had friends at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles, I was able to convince them to let me come in and go into their lab and just spend the day looking at microbes under their extremely expensive microscope. They had like a $70,000 microscope, and it was cool because it was basically hooked up directly to a computer, so you didn't have to spend all your time looking through the eyepiece. You looked at a high-res image on a screen. And you can get, you know, microscopes fairly cheap that you can do the same thing. I mean, but this right here, USB microscope, get one of those guys, grab some dirt or some pond water. That's some great inspiration, because microbes will use completely different rules than insects or any kind of metazoan. Well, some of them are multicellular, but they're really wild. Let's see. I just want to get a little bit of texture on here before I get into painting it, just because it'll give me something to work with masking and make the painting a bit more interesting. And this is why I do, you know, people always ask me why I do this painting in ZBrush as opposed to Substance. Well, I use both, or Marmoset. But the nice thing about ZBrush is that I can use the sculpting to create masks and that kind of stuff very quickly in ZBrush. So a lot of this kind of detail I can put into a mask and then use that to lay down some paint. And then, you know, augment it in Substance Painter or something like that, you know. Since this guy is kind of cartoony, I'm not going to go crazy with the detail. I just want a little something. So I think that looks a little bit better. So let's save this guy. Kind of curious. Let me see if I can. I'm very excited that I have some of the movies that I created at the Natural History Museum here on my computer. I thought they may be in a hard drive somewhere, but let's take a few minutes to appreciate microbial pond life. Just really cool things to get inspiration from. This one's a bit on the slow side. Let me see if I can find another one here. So this is literally just pond water that was taken from the front area of the Natural History Museum. So you can see little bits of algae and that kind of thing. Let's see if we can find any critters whipping around in here. Let's see. Okay, that one's not very interesting. I know there's some good ones in here, trust me. There we go. There's a little guy. Isn't he cute? There's that guy. Hey Rodolfo, how you doing, man? I'm looking at home movies. Inspiration for critters. Here's a little buggy. I mean, this is actually, even more inspiration for animation than anything else. These guys are always semi-transparent, so but every once in a while you get a cool shot. All right. That was kind of lame. All right, I'll have to find some good ones and then, curate them so for next week so it's a little bit more interesting. But there's some cool stuff going on here, some antennae and some nice little mandibles. So I'm just adjusting the sort of the depth of field on this while filming it. It's some cool ideas. So I won't take up the whole night doing this, but bottom line, microscopes are fun. When I'm using the camera in ZBrush, you're talking about this thing right here? I don't know. When I'm in ZBrush, I think in terms of just, rotating the model around more than the cameras. The cameras are sort of more of a Maya thing for me. If I'm rotating around, I'll hold the shift key and do this kind of thing. I'm doing pretty well. Enjoying the fine baked goods here in France. Did you about in the draw panel? Or these guys right here, the rotate things. Oh, I see what you're saying. This one. Okay, I gotcha. Oh, Nick, that's a really good question. He's talking about the rotational axes right here. So I normally have it on X, Y, and Z, right? If you switch it to Y, then default is going to rotate around the Y axis. If I click on Z, it's going to rotate on the Z axis. If I drag back and forth, it's rotating on Z, rotating on Y, rotating X, Y, and Z. I usually use X, Y, and Z. You're right, though. I don't think that's something that you can save in preferences as a default. But it's an interesting question. Yeah, I think that's why I use X, Y, and Z, because this makes more sense to me. But it's possible that if you have it on Z axis, right, I'm rotating around the Z axis, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key and click on the model. That's going to be the pivot point now, right? So if I click right there, now that's the pivot point. So it's still rotating on the Z axis, but the problem is the pivot's constantly changing as I work on the model. So maybe that's what's throwing you off. And then you can turn that off in the transform panel by turning off local. If you turn that off, then the pivot is going to be, I can't work like that because for me, it gets off a little bit too much. I prefer having that local, because then I could reset the pivot just by clicking on the model. But you could try that. Maybe that'll make it a little bit easier for you. But in terms of saving this as a preference, I'll mention that to Paul and see if there's a way to do it or if it's something they would think about for future release. But I don't think you can set that by default, as far as I know, because it's not a preference. Maybe there is a preference in here somewhere. These movies right here, I did actually, I made these myself using when I was at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles a long time ago. But I was using their equipment and just saved out the movies. There's some, I have to do, edit together the more interesting stuff because a lot of it's just searching around, but I know there's some really cool parts in there. I've been using the XYZ option for years, so I'm just used to that. Okay, so let's go back in here and fill this with the lighter color green. All right, and then I'm going to go in here. Let's bring down go to a paintbrush. Masking. Cavity. Just going to get a little bit of, oops. Just laying down some colors to play with. Something like that. Something kind of groovy. Not much there. Okay. Oh yeah, I saw one of these guys in our garden just the other day. It's so funny because I'll be hanging out and my wife will start screaming from the garden, and I'll come out because she's found some really cool bug that she needs me to see. We'll both sit there and stare at it and take pictures of it and marvel over it. It's a lot of fun. But of course, every time she calls me over, I think that like something horrible has happened. But it's just a cool bug. But yeah, we saw a nice big katydid the other day, a big juicy guy. And we also found a big mantis egg sac thing. Wow, I really sound like an entomologist right now, don't I? It's not a chrysalis. I'm not sure what they call it. Mantis eggs, I guess. We'll just stick with mantis eggs for now. Getting ready to hatch on one of our chairs, so little mantids will be running around soon enough. Hopefully eating all the flies. We got some nice big spiders here too, much bigger than what I saw in California or in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, we used to have a lot of black widows in my yards, but they kind of got brown widows came in, invasive species, and took over because the brown widows outcompete the black widows. They're not as dangerous because they don't, I guess, they can't pierce human skin or something like that. Their teeth aren't as sharp, even though their poison is, or their venom is pretty bad. But they outcompete because they produce more babies, and so they pushed out all the black widows, which just kind of sucks because black widows are very cool. There's no brown widow in the Marvel universe, as far as I know. Black widows are much more interesting. They're much more beautiful. And pretty much, as long as you don't squeeze them or touch them and leave them alone and give them some distance, they won't. Very few spiders actually attack people, contrary to popular belief. I said very few, I didn't say none. But black widows, you can just, as long as you don't have them in your shoe or something like that, or you're not reaching around without looking in your garden shed or something like that. I remember one time I was on a photography workshop and we were walking around in the woods at night. It's a group of us. And this woman, she's a biologist. She's probably like 5'4" or something like that. Just not that height means anything. But I was hanging out with this guy who was something like 6'9". I don't know if it's 6'9". But he was really tall. And we came across this bush, and there was just a big black widow as big as your thumb. The abdomen was as big as your thumb, kind of hanging from this bush. And me and this tall guy kind of like jumped back and freaked out. And this woman just grabbed it with her hand, just like that, snatched it, held it out, brought it all the way back to where our little lab was set up, and we took pictures of it all night. But she was just like, yeah, if you know what you're doing, they're not that harmful. And now, don't go out there and start messing with black widows and say that Eric told you to do it on the ZBrush live stream. I don't recommend doing it unless you're a professional and know what you're doing. But I'm just saying, if you do know what you're doing, they're not necessarily going to kill you. I think it's funny, though, as I read the common symptoms of black widow venom, and one of them is a sudden fear that you're going to die. And I'm like, well, of course you have that fear. You just got bit by a black widow. There's also, like, apparently cool hallucinations and other things, agony, pain, misery, decreased appreciation for nature, and the sudden fear that you're about to die. All this and more with black widow venom. take a look at our reference here. Now that I got some paint on here. Oh, they're so cute. This one has some nice detail on it. Get some of this blue in here. I'm going to bring in some of this pale yellow. That's kind of fun. I think with poly painting for me, it's like it never really matters how you start. It only matters how you end. So I'll just throw on just all kinds of colors just to get something going, and then try and work with that towards something like this, you know. And right now I'm just doing sort of streaks of variations of greens and blues. Maybe I'll bring in some of these spots here as well. But you can see with the Katydid, it's like almost every single one of them is a little bit different, so I don't have any definite rules that I need to follow. I can just use my imagination on this one. Which is interesting, because then you look at something like a butterfly, and it's like the specific species of butterfly will be very, very, you know, like if you look at a blue morpho, like they have 2 white spots on their wings that are exact same spot for every blue morpho. They might be slightly different in size, but they're always in that same spot. 2 little white dots on the blue side of the wing, or if you look at the wing pattern, they could be very, very consistent. Whereas other bugs, the colors can vary wildly from one individual to the next, which I always find really interesting. I think I'm going to use one of these, something of this alpha right here. There we go. Something a bit more blotchy like these guys. Have I overdone it? Maybe. Let's go in here and do some lighter ones. I saw the live action Lilo and Stitch the other day, which I thought was nice. I liked it. I know some people were. I don't know how I feel about all the live action remakes of animated movies. I mean, Lilo and Stitch the original was almost a perfect movie, but I still enjoyed it. The live action remake, sort of semi live action. It wasn't like there wasn't a whole lot of. There was plenty of animation in there, plenty of CG. It was nicely done. I don't know if they really need to remake How to Train Your Dragon. That's also pretty much a perfect film, as animated films go, in my opinion. But I guess they gotta make something, right? And movies are expensive, and you don't really want to bet on a brand new IP. It's a huge risk, so making remakes is a safe bet. But I like the Lilo and Stitch. I thought it was nicely done. I'm not like a Disney fanatic, though. I have some friends who are. I'm really only fanatical about one thing in the world, and that's, Clash. My brother and I are thinking about doing a YouTube channel where all we do is talk about the Clash. Two old guys going on and on about a band that broke up in the 80s. That's entertainment. Let's see. So I'm kind of going back and forth this. I might have gotten a little bit too far. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of this nice bright green in here. Yeah, I don't want this to compete too much visually with these guys. So I'm gonna get a darker color over this and just kind of obscure some of that detail. Yeah, let's leave it there for now. And I like the bright red legs on this guy, so I'm going to stick with that, I think. I'm going to sample this red right here. Do color. Invert the mask. Do some dark red spots. Nice by smoothness. Some orangey yellows in there. Just a little bit. It's kind of cool. Aspect curvature. This is nice because it'll be little dots right here, so I'll make those a little bit darker. Just laying on some colors, and then I'm gonna do a little bit of blurring here and there. Let's take a look. We're kind of blending in this green. I might add some detail to those parts as well at some point. I think I didn't quite finish that part, but that's okay. I'll come back to that a little bit. So I think we're going to do green right here. Greenish yellow. And then towards the top here as well. I'm going to bring in some of this dark green. dark spots. Let's get some lighter green spots in here too. Kind of like what I'm seeing down here. Just a whole lot of different colors going on. This bright orange. Some bright orange down here to the feet. Almost there. So I'm going to switch to these guys now, these legs. Same kind of thing. I like these spots here, so I'll go in here and do mask by cavity. Just a little bit. Invert that. Use it to make some little dark red spots. A light orange in here. Well, talking about one of these 3D connections. Yeah, I had this one. I just got this out of storage, so I got to hook it up, set it up. I think I got to load the drivers on here. So basically, I moved all my equipment from Los Angeles to Europe, so I'm still kind of unpacking things and setting things up, which in my studio has been gradually building. But yeah, those mouses, those type deals are really cool. I find them quite enjoyable. Again, the other problem is I've been using ZBrush for so long, it's like there's some muscle memory that's hard to overcome. I had to sort of relearn the new tools when I get a chance and get used to using them. I still have a tendency, after using ZBrush for more than 20 years now. It's like retraining my hands to do new things is a little bit difficult. But I do think that the 3D connection device is quite nice. Whoops. Did not want to do that. There was another one, the Zen, was it Zen Labs? I forget the name. They make a competing tablet to Cintiq Wacom, and it's really nice. They had a really nice sort of device. I mean, the Cintiq comes with this thing, which is pretty cool, but I really liked the ones that they had. It was very programmable, very easy to use. It was a very nice tablet in general. I've used it at a couple of times when I've been like at little get-togethers, like the Z Summit, and so that they were there, and they were really cool. I'm gonna plug them. I might as well get the name of the company right. I think it was this one. The review on Reddit. All right, where's their website? Oh, here's Amazon. This is not, yeah, I mean, this is kind of their little 3D mouse button type deal. And it's nice because it has an LCD display, so it's very programmable. That's a very nice piece of equipment, and that's not the one that I tried. It's one that I tried was a bigger version. I think it was something like this. That's a smaller one, but it's pretty neat. I don't think that quite qualifies as like what you're talking about, but it's worth doing a shout out because I think they do a nice job. I like my Cintiq as well. I had an older Cintiq, and that thing was just like, man, I had it for like 15 years, and almost zero problems with that thing the entire time I had it. Aside from the occasional driver glitch, whatever that happens to all tablets, that just requires a little bit of uploading and hunting around to find out what the problem is. But usually, other than that, very few, any serious problems at all. So it's a solid piece of equipment, and this one I've had for a few years now, and it's nice and light, works really well. I don't know why I'm suddenly doing commercials for tablets, but if you're curious, ZBrush with an actual tablet where you draw on the screen is life-changing. Am I using the 24-inch? Yeah, I think I have the 24-inch Pro, yeah. Huion is also good. I got one for my wife for Christmas, and she really likes it. And it's a bit more affordable than the Cintiqs. Ronco should come out with one. Whatever happened to Ronco? It's for Gen X only. Reference. All right, well, it's getting late here, so I'm going to wrap this up for tonight. And I think what I'm going to do is, so next Monday I'll be on at the same time, and I think I'm going to start a new project. I'm thinking of doing a spider of some sort. I haven't done a spider in a long time, but something new to play with and to watch while I'm doing these things. And, you know, talk about spiders. Spiders are fun. So that'll be next week, and I'll finish this guy up in my own time and maybe do some renders of him, maybe in Redshift or something like that. And I'll post it to the YouTube channel when I get a chance, because he's almost done. I mean, there's just a few more details on here. I might touch this up a little bit, as well as this leg. Oh, we got a request now. All right, hold on a second. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. A big old tarantulas. That's pretty cool. The other one, what I really like to do is a lynx spider. I haven't done one of the. I mean, that's my favorite spiders because they're just really beautiful and interesting looking and very colorful. The tarantula is tough because it's a lot of hair on there, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, look at the face on this guy. That's pretty wild. So I will think about it over this week and see what I want to do. But definitely, I think spiders next time. Yeah, he looks pissed. Not happy. These guys are cute. Look at that. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight, and I'll see you next time. Same bug time, same bug channel. And, you know, stay dry, whatever that means. Oh yeah, with the Australians with the big spiders that like to hang out in the visor. They would say in Australia, if you see somebody driving like this all over the road, it's because they've flipped down the visor and one of those giant spiders has just dropped down on their lap. But I guess the real Australians probably just pet the spider and let them ride shotgun or something. All right.